Welcome everyone to our third Advocate Academy in Georgia. Actually, you're kicking off the third Advocate Academy, and Georgia's kicking it off this time. And we are talking about IEP preparation. Yay! I find that this topic is one of those that I have to say this, I have to always be mindful of my emotions when we start talking about this, because I find this to be such a personal topic, because we are talking about our children. And I know that, so I try not to get overly passionate. And if I do, I'm going to just apologize from the get-go. So I'm Susan. I grew up a military kid, but we got stationed. My husband is actually getting ready. He just retired after 20 years in the service. And we ended up living for about 8 years in North Carolina. So I still consider North Carolina home, even though we live in Virginia. I have a little boy named Ian who has ADHD and was just recently diagnosed with a visual motor processing disorder. I used to help advocate for military families actually who were navigating the special education system when we move state to state, because it's always new. And I also am an adult with 2 learning disabilities and ADHD. So, and now Tiffany, our awesome parent leader for Georgia.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I am Tiffany White, as Susan said, and likewise with Susan, I call the Tar Heel State my home as well. Was born, raised in North Carolina, educated there as well. And most of you that know me know that I enjoy advocating and building partnerships in communities. That's how a lot of you met me. Love advocating and having just positive outcomes for students that have disabilities and learning and attention issues. So that's just a little bit about me, and we will turn it back over to Susan.
Thank you, my friend. So let's talk about IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Again, I'm so sorry about my technological issues. Apparently on Zoom, there is a way for you to actually have some notes up, but I could not figure out how to do that and still not, and have it cover the slides. So I have to read from all the notes that I printed. So I'm sorry if you guys get to see the top of my head for a little bit, but the federal law, for those of you who may or may not know, the federal law that protects our children with disabilities in school, or one of the federal laws that protects our children with disabilities in schools and provides them with an IEP, which is an individualized education program. Education program is IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And during our very first Advocate Academy, we talked at length about what IDEA is and what the 5 components are of IDEA. So we're going to quickly go over this part because we really want to talk more this time about preparing, getting yourself ready for this meeting that is, you never know how it's going to go. It's always a mystery. Or not always, but it can always be a mystery. So we want to kind of go over this information quickly. IDEA was passed in 1975, and it was originally called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. And by 1997, the law was renamed to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. Sometimes people call it IDEA as well, because it does spell out IDEA. The primary purposes of IDEA are to provide a free and appropriate public education, which is FAPE, to children with disabilities. But the other purpose is to give parents a voice in their child's education. And IDEA receives about $12 billion in federal funds each year to serve approximately 6.6 million children, teens, and young adults with disabilities. There are 5 key concepts with IDEA, and each of these are hyperlinked actually. And so when we send out, again, the recording and the slides, you will have access to these hyperlinks. And the 5 key concepts are a free and appropriate public education, FAPE, child find, least restrictive environment, or LRE, the individual education program, IEP, and procedural safeguards, which is really those are the protections for not just our children, but also for us as, for us as parents. There is, I am a very big fan of this quote, and this actually comes directly from the US Code from IDEA, and it is our purpose of an IEP. And I don't know, when I read this a while ago, it made me really rethink how I advocate, and I wanted to share it with parents too. Disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. Improving educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy of ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. And this is what I like to tell parents. As you're sitting in these meetings, these IEP meetings, these eligibility meetings, talking with teachers, talking with support staff, ask these questions. Are we ensuring equality of opportunity for my child? What about full participation? What you're teaching them, will it guarantee independent living and economic self-sufficiency? If you can answer yes to those questions, then I feel like you're on a pretty good path. Tiffany, how do you feel about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I also like to think about, well, do I use it in my own daily life?
Yeah.
What are you teaching them? Is it something that you can use?
Yeah.
So that's what I look at as well.
I do too. I'm right there with you, my friend. So before the IEP meeting, so we're kind of chugging right along. I didn't feel like it was gonna go so fast, Tiffany. Here we are. We're just chugging right along. So before the IEP meeting, and I'm going to hand this part over to Tiffany. So take it away.
Okay. And I apologize if you guys may hear some noise in the background. We're having some little repairs. So if it just gets unbearable, just let me know. But as far as requesting an evaluation, many of us may or may not be familiar with it. But first, let's talk about the purpose of the special ed eval. And which the purpose of the whole evaluation is to discover if your child qualifies as a child that has a disability, which is defined by IDEA. The eval will gather information that will help determine what your child's educational needs are. And an initial evaluation is required by IDEA before any special education or any related services can be provided. A re-evaluation that occurs every 3 years because educational needs and supports change as your child grow and learn. So don't just have one evaluation and don't have another one, because your child is ever evolving. And you can also send in a request for an initial special ed eval in writing. And everyone that knows me knows that I communicate everything in writing to your child's school. You can send it to the principal, the school psychologist, the school counselor. And when you're sitting in an IEP meeting, just request it at the IEP meeting, okay? And your school will send a permission to evaluate form from within 10 calendar days. And you must, the key is you must return the signed form for the evaluation to begin. Because if you just get an agreement, that, well, a verbal agreement in the IEP meeting that you're going to evaluate, that doesn't count. So the key is to have everything in writing.
Tiffany, if I could jump in right here about the
Absolutely.
evaluation, something I didn't think to share, but it just kind of occurred to me recently. As your children are getting older too, you're going to want to have an evaluation done probably those last couple of years of high school. And one of the big reasons for that is once your child is in higher education, if that's what they decide to do, so college, some kind of a community college, whatever they decide to do later on in life, and they now start to receive ADA accommodations. Getting those standardized tests can be difficult for your child if their evaluations are too old, considered too old. So, and I personally ran into this as I needed to take the GRE. My evaluations were more than 5 years old, and I was not going to receive accommodations to take the GRE. And I had to actually go and sit down with a psychologist to have them reread all of the evaluations I had done when I was in my early 20s to re-verify my diagnoses. So the evaluations, while they can be taxing on our children, in the long run, to have those to be a little more current, or at least to have someone look them over again to say yes, this is a current diagnosis. It really does help your children as they become adults. So sorry, just something I thought about, because we do
it's
eventually
absolutely
talk
necessary.
about that transition.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, Tiffany.
No, that's perfectly fine. Please jump in anytime you have a thought.
Oh, thank you.
And as a parent, you are able to request an evaluation for special ed, but did you know that the school can make a request as well? Because they can. If they feel that they have something or they want to evaluate, they can. Even if they want to look at math, or if they want to look at reading, they can make a request as well. And if the school initiates the request for an eval, it must be in writing. It must be in writing, and you must receive a permission to evaluate form. So just keep that in mind, that the school can make one as well.
Oops. Oh. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Let's see. Okay. And then understanding the evaluation reports. All of the evaluations are complete, and now it's time to review the report, right? So request a copy of the evaluation report and schedule a conference or a call before the meeting in order to review their findings. You can certainly call anyone at your school from the, well, I should say it's best to call the person who completed the eval, like your psychologist. That's certainly the key person that you need to be speaking with. Okay. You can also talk with someone in your child's school or at the parent center in our state. Okay, which is basically parent to parent here. And as I said before, the professionals that's conducting each part of the eval should be able to discuss the findings prior to the meeting so that you come to the meeting prepared. Okay, you just don't want to get there and just be reading over the eval and you don't understand what anything means, and they have already started making decisions and things of that nature. So as to speak with the speech pathologist, the occupational therapist, everyone who's involved in your child's evaluation. And some of the questions that you can ask is like, what assessments were used? So you certainly want to be knowledgeable about what tests were used and what data was collected, okay? How did you collect the data? What are some educational strategies that's being suggested? So you want to know, like, what are some of your recommendations? Because you want to have time to think these things over before you get to the meeting, okay? And it's important to find someone that you can work with and they have the ability to review the evaluation report with you. Okay, that's certainly key. So I want everyone to remember that the main takeaway here is that you understand your evaluations reports before your meetings.
If I'm going to jump in again.
Sure, absolutely.
I find that if no one wants to talk with me, to discuss the evaluations before the meetings, this might seem, I don't know. I don't even know how to phrase it right, but I have absolutely no problem using the IEP meeting time to ask everyone to go over those evaluation reports. It's important to do it. I mean, they're talking about your child, they're talking about, or your family members, somebody that you care about. And to have this information beforehand, I feel that it only helps us as advocates and as parents and as family members, as caregivers. And so I think it's important to find someone who you can sit down and really ask some questions with. Ideally, that should be the professionals, the people who did the testing. But if you are uncomfortable asking them questions, that's okay too, right?
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
Okay. Parental rights, Tiffany.
Okay.
You want me to do this one, or do you want to do it?
You know what? I can let you have it. That's fine.
Are you sure? I don't mind. So, okay, IDEA built in parental rights. So this is that second part of IDEA, our parental rights. And they are the rights that you are entitled to when you advocate for your child. You have the right to an explanation of procedural safeguards under IDEA and your state. You have the right to participate in meetings related to identification, evaluation, and placement of your child. You have the right to obtain an independent educational evaluation. You have the right to receive prior written notice relating to identification, evaluation, and placement of your child. And you have the right to give or deny consent for anything that's happening, anything. And you have the right to disagree with the decisions being made by the school. And to me, I'm really big into parental rights. This is part of our voice. So you are able to gather and review all the information before the IEP meetings. That means you get their evaluation reports. You can ask for your child's homework. You can see their classwork. You can see their tests, any kind of standardized test, anything. You are entitled to all of that information. And you can invite people. Don't forget, part of what you get to do is you get to have a team as well. There might be an IEP team at the school, and yes, you are most definitely part of the team, but then there's the other team. That's what I like to call it, the other team. And I call it Susan's team because I'm Susan, right? But Tiffany has her team, right? She's got Tiffany's team. And these are the people that come with us to the meetings. And I've asked my son's OT to be at our meetings before. We have asked for his pediatrician, and the person, and he actually came. It was pretty exciting. I was like, well, that's nice. Thank you. But you can invite whoever you want to be there at these meetings with you, because I have also found that being in these meetings, you need that support, right? As the parent, it's nice to have it. And it's nice to have someone who's there, who's part of your team. So, Tiffany, do you have anything that you'd like to add, or is it too noisy in the background right now?
It's fine. I just wanted to make sure that no one else was hearing. But yes, but Susan is absolutely correct. Please invite people to come with you, and you have the absolute right to do that and just ask about anything. Absolutely correct.
And of course, we have a whole new set of words and terms and acronyms that we get to learn with all of this, and it's so much fun. So these are just some of the ones from the federal law through IDEA. The biggest one that you're going to read a lot, and this is a word I find that parents and caregivers, a lot of people have a hard time with this word, and I don't think it's a bad word, but the word disability. For some reason, there can be some negative connotations with it, but I have to say, I'm thankful that this word is being used when compared to the words that were being used just 25 and 30, 50, 60 years ago. So they are always going to, the law and the IEP team will always identify your child as a child with a disability. So that's a word that we need to start getting familiar with, because it is the federally recognized word. And so there you go. Some kids have a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, and not all of our children will have them, but some of them will. I have to say, I'm going to sound like I don't know a lot here, but I have done a little bit of looking into behavior intervention plans. I'm not the most familiar with them. I don't know if Tiffany, if you know a lot more about them than I do. You know,
Well,
I know enough, but I don't feel like I'm very comfortable at this exact moment. So,
well, I think that we should probably just explain that if your child has any behaviors in
that's
school
right.
at
Okay.
all, that you should absolutely have a BIP in place, because that also helps protect
That's right.
your
Okay.
child, and may even keep them from getting expelled. Or if your child have really um, behaviors that can really can cause him to get in trouble, because really
Yeah.
and truly it should help them. um it should really help them to work on their behaviors. It is a
Yeah.
plan, it is an intervention plan,
That's right.
so
Yes.
it should actually help your child with behaviors.
That's right. We also have the independent educational evaluation. So as the name implies, it's independent. It's not what's being done. You can ask for that as parents. You can say, hey, that's nice that you did that evaluation. Something seems off. I don't know. Or maybe, I don't know, whatever it is that something just makes you say, hey, I'd like to have an independent of what was done already. Um, this I this is a really great acronym, and this is a really great phrase that we use a lot, is PLOP, the present levels of performance. That is where your child is academically after they've done the evaluations. The present levels of performance are going to really help drive the IEP, help drive goals, and help with, to me, establishing a nice path forward. You need to know where you are so you can know where to go. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, and and then the present levels of performance leads into the annual goals, and those are, as the name implies, they are yearly goals that are designed to ensure your child's present levels of performance increase, get better. So, and we are going to have an example about that. SDI is specially designed instruction. So that's, as again, as the name implies, it's instruction. It's the general education curriculum or a different kind of curriculum, but it's designed very specifically for your child. AT, we did our second Advocate Academy on assistive technology, and assistive technology is great with helping out our kids who have disabilities. A transition plan. Guess what? Kids grow up. They're going to need a transition plan. And you're going to have to start talking about that as they start getting older. How do we transition them from the world of high school into the big wide world? And then the Office of Civil Rights through the Department of Education is where you can actually file, if you feel that you need to file a complaint, you can do that through the Office of Civil Rights. And that will be, through the Department of Education. So I think that's it for these, right?
Okay.
And then Georgia has their own. Everybody's got their own acronyms. Yay!
Right. And even though generally broad, the LEA is your local education agency, which is really short for district. So
Yes.
that's what they call themselves, or you have a district representative, as most of you will see on the IEPs. PWN is prior written notice. That's pretty much a federal term, but basically if the school wants to change something within your IEP, or if you ask for something and you don't receive it, you ask for prior written notice. So this is your notice of basically why you did not receive what you requested, or the district's reason for requesting a change within your IEP. The Georgia DOE, of course, there's the Georgia Department of Education, who governs all of our schools in Georgia. GVRA is the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, and this agency is very great with transition a lot. That's what they're known for, especially when your child gets a teenager, but I believe that every state has one. And your multidisciplinary evaluation team, kind of like basically your IEP team in short. your present levels of performance, the acronym known as PLOP that we just covered. Um, this describes how your child performs in academics and functional areas, including daily living and self-help, your social skills, behavior, sensory, your communication skills, and mobility. It includes your parent input, documenting your most pressing concerns, as well as your child's strengths and challenges outside of the school. The IEP team, it is required to actually describe your child's present levels of performance. This is what drives the IEP, y'all. As far as what goes in here, if your child has a need, this describes where your child is and your child's needs. Everything goes into the present levels of performance, in which Susan just mentioned, it drives your goals and your services. Okay. And it'll begin to make more sense if you're not already familiar. When you start talking about the plot with your school, this is your time for you to voice your concerns. I know in Georgia, we have a section called parental concerns, and this is where you should have your child's needs really thought out and planned. And to just really describe what your child needs, what you see at home, especially now that we're in a virtual setting. What do you see at home? How often do you support your child? All of this needs to go into your present levels of performance, more specifically, your parental input. And actually what a lot of parents do is take a flash drive, they write it up in a Word document, take a flash drive, take it to their meeting, and actually have them insert it directly within the IEP, okay? Because most of the times when we get there, it'd be a lot of things going on and 2 and 3 people talking at the same time. That way you know that you actually already have it in there and your voice is heard. So just take some time to really think out your parental input, okay?
Okay. IEP goals.
Absolutely, and that leads to your goals, okay? And as we just mentioned, knowing your child's present levels will help when writing measurable goals for your child. Your IEP goals, they need to be SMART and reflect your child's academic performance levels. And what does SMART mean? Specific, measurable, use action words, realistic and relevant, and time limited. And as far as the S with specific, the goals target areas of academic achievement and functional performance. Included are clear descriptions of the knowledge and skills that will be taught. That will be taught is a key word, and how the child progress will be measured. Measurable goals allow parents and teachers to know how much progress your child has made since the performance was last measured. With measurable goals, you will know when your child reached the goal. And use action words. The IEP goals, they include 3 components that must be stated in measurable terms. Direction of behaviors, okay? Increase, decrease, and maintain. Let's use those action words when we are writing our goals. The areas of need: reading, writing, social skills, transition, communication, etc. Just please identify the specific area of need. Your level of attainment, the age level, without assistance. And action words or sentences like your child will be able to. You want to use that verbiage, okay? And realistic and relevant. Realistic, relevant goals and objectives that addresses your child's needs. A statement of measurable annual goals, including academic and functional goals, are designed to meet the need that results from the child disability. and enable the child to be involved in the general education curriculum and meet each of and meet the child's other educational needs that results from the child's disability, excuse me. As far as it being time limited, what does your child need to know and be able to do after 1 year of special education? Time limited goals and objectives enable you to monitor the progress in regular intervals. Goals are updated yearly with each IEP meeting because your child is growing and learning. And remember, you can call an IEP meeting anytime you want. If your child has mastered that goal, call a meeting if you want the school to address something else, okay? So create a list of questions and concerns, and we'll say this frequently, but it's important. You are your child's expert, okay? You know your child the best. You are an important process and your input is certainly valuable, okay? Next slide. And here is just an example, and I won't necessarily read all of this, but I want you guys to just see what a SMART goal looks like, okay?
I love this slide.
Me too.
I think this is a great slide, everyone. And as I said, we will make sure you get these slides so you can look at this as an example. But I think the part that I really like the most is where we see after 9 weeks, given 3rd grade material, Alex will read, and there it is, right there. After 18 weeks, after 27 weeks, and I love that. It's nice. It measures. It collects data. You get to review it. It's relevant.
Absolutely.
It has, there's time limits and everything. It's a great example. And I'm really glad we have this in here to share with the parents so that they have something to reference.
Absolutely.
I find that when I'm looking at IEP goals, if I go and start searching online, goals are not one size fits all, right?
Right.
And I get lost, and then I get confused, and then I get frustrated because I find it very overwhelming because I'm reading, I end up in like 10 different blogs, of course. and while that's not a bad thing, at the same time, we don't want, I sometimes that's not what's best, because again, it's not one size fits all. So, right. I mean, it's got an individual education plan for a reason. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And sorry, Tiffany, I got excited about this.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. And just don't let them be so trivial or meaningless. Like, John will increase. I mean, increase by what?
Yeah.
So just make sure that they're measurable and very specific.
Yes. And if the same goal has been on your child's IEP from 1st grade into like 4th or 5th grade, I would ask questions about that too. The goals are supposed to be annual and there should be some progress. So, and that means then that something needs to change. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. That's the other thing. You're like, hey, let's try to work on this and make it better.
Absolutely.
I'm big into managing expectations. As you just heard me share with you all, sometimes when I get on Google and I start researching like IEP goals, it's not necessarily the best thing. But it's important for us to manage our expectations because these are emotional meetings. That's the thing. This is our child, right? Like this is somebody that we love, that we are advocating for, and it's a big deal. And so for me, I have to remember to manage my expectations. We don't know what's going to happen. It's impossible to know. I do not have a crystal ball. Maybe one of you does, but I don't know too many people who do. So I don't want to focus on what might happen. That's why I'm spending all this time gathering this information, why I'm looking at the present levels of performance, why I want the evaluation reports, why my own personal observations, because then it's going to help me put together a better plan as I'm in that meeting. And to me, I think it's important to remember that. Like, I need information so I can be better prepared. And as we had mentioned in our first Advocate Academy, when we started talking about, I think it was the least restrictive environment, actually, the courts have weighed in and used the Cadillac and the serviceable Chevrolet comparison. We're going to want the Cadillac of educational services and supports, but schools are only required to provide a serviceable Chevy. But as I said to Tiffany one day last week, it's okay to go in to these meetings and asking for the stars, the sun, and the moon, because boy, if you got the stars and the sun, wouldn't that be amazing? Right? Because maybe next year you can get all three, the stars, the sun, and the moon. And maybe the year after that, you can get even a little bit more. So I try to look at it as in a more positive light. And that might seem a little too like happy, but at the same time, if I get one thing that we're asking for that I know will really help my son, and out of like the three things that I've asked for, one is better than none. And I also feel that it gives me like some room, like now my foot's in the door, right? And now I'm like, hey.
And we're gonna go with an extra push.
Yeah. So that's just, I think it's important to remember, to manage our expectations, because this is something that will reoccur every year. And documentation.
Right. And if you know me, you know that I love documentation, and I just believe that that's probably just because of my professional background, is that I document everything, I save everything, and I think that as a parent that you have to do this. And so from the moment that you send in a letter requesting an eval for special education, everything will be in writing, okay? So just keep it all, okay? Of course, it's up to you how you organize your information. An IEP binder can help with organizing and tracking your child's progress. Confirm with the school district that the policy for audio recording meetings, and plan to make their own audio recording of every meeting. And a good resource is Otter.ai. They are so helpful. I have them myself. It is a helpful app, and it's an extension for recording and transcribing. And the app is amazing. So for those of you that want to audio record your meetings and it just transcribe it, you don't have to just sit there just listening and going back and transcribing and writing everything down anymore, because it cuts your time in half.
It's amazing. Also,
absolutely.
Sorry, Tiffany, I didn't mean to cut you off, but something else about recordings or with documentation, parents who have, or caregivers who have disabilities are also entitled to ADA accommodations and accessibility when advocating. I always ask for audio recording during an IEP meeting, because I cannot focus my attention to that many people in the room. And still take notes and still ask questions. So I ask for a recording also as part of my ADA accommodations. And just let the school know if that's what you need before the meeting. They want to make sure that they want to be accessible. They are also receiving federal funding, so they must be accessible. So ensure that ADA is being applied to you as the parent and caregiver. So
absolutely. Yep. And so and then you should and in referring back to your documentation, that means everything, guys. That means your school records, your evaluations, your child's assessments. Keep it all, because you are going to want to do a comparison from year to year, because that's how you can certainly see if your child is progressing. And doing those charts like we learn about in Wright's Law, just doing those graphs, that's how you are going to compare. So keeping your documentation is absolutely important. Yep. Okay. Yep. And before the meeting ends, and some questions that you can ask is that, as if you bring home the draft to read it again. You can ask to read it again. Make sure someone at the school is available to ask any questions. I always like to bring mine home if possible. And so, and if for some reason they may say they have to clean it up or do whatever, okay, well, that's fine. But you can also take time in that meeting. If they may not want you to bring it home, well, just take all the time you need in that meeting, even if it takes an hour so you can see it, okay? When your child's when will your child's IEP be implemented in the general education classroom? So you have the right to ask that, although that should be covered in your goals. If you wrote those really good specific goals, then that should also answer that question, but just also ask about some of your services and when are they going to start? And keep track of your child's progress at home as well. And remember, you don't have to sign the IEP at the meeting, especially for us in Georgia who are getting those initial evaluations. Please take it home, read over it, let someone else, a friend, read over it that's also familiar with it. Okay, so let's just remember to cover all those bases.
I think I skipped ahead too fast. Sorry, Tiffany.
That's okay. As far as your link article and resources, we have a lot of links from the IDEA presentation as well that we link here for you as well, and some of the things that we have discussed. So all of those links will be in here and each one of you will receive that.
I mean, we have 2 pages, y'all.
Absolutely.
We wanted you to have all the resources. Speaking of, so we have state and local resources. I'm going to go over I'm just going to tell you briefly about this, the national resources. Of course, you have us, NCLD, you have Edutopia, Learning Disabilities Association of America, understood.org. Actually, Understood has a really great download for an IEP binder with all sorts of tracking documents, everything like that. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's free. So yep. In the Council for Exceptional Children Parent Center Hub, Rights Law is great, and Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, or COPA. Rights Law and COPA, you can actually find advocates with them. But it's, to me, you know, I am a bigger fan of going to my local community, the local parent to parent, because that is really, that's the best place to get help. And, you know, we have, what is it? How many pages of local resources, Tiffany? I think we have 3 or 4 for Georgia now, don't we?
Right, absolutely. And what we like to do is keep adding resources with each presentation so that you guys can have them. And some of the main ones here, as Susan mentioned, is Parent to Parent, as well as your Georgia DOE. And guys, please explore the Georgia DOE website. I mean, because this states what your kids should be learning in school, what you should be putting in the IEPs, and it's often a very underutilized resource. So please go there and just know what they should be teaching. I mean, it has a plethora of information there, okay? As well as your Georgia Vote office, again, great for transition for all parents that have teenagers there. Please utilize them, okay? And again, you'll get all these resources. So
here's another page.
Read them here. Absolutely.
And then you can connect with us. Yay! Amy, our parent leader in Texas, got me our Instagram information. I'm so thankful. I think every time we did this, I was like, oh, I keep forgetting to add our Instagram. So yay, there it finally is. If you have some general information questions, you can email us at info@ncld.org. If you have questions about policy and the policies that we're working on at NCLD, you can email us at policy@ncld.org. And as I mentioned earlier, we're doing a series of advocate academies. And so we've done the first one, which is the introduction to IDEA in section 504. Last month we did assistive technology, and both of those are hyperlinked with the first two YouTube presentations. And when we send out both the recording this time, along with the PDF of the slides, you will get this information again, and it will continue to build. So next month, we're going to talk about 504s. There are some similarities, but not at the same time. And we're seeing, and depending on where you live, and depending on the child's diagnosis, a 504 is considered over an IEP or vice versa. And 504 plans are really interesting because it applies to a lot of diagnoses out there. It's really interesting to me. And then we're going to tie everything together. We're going to start talking about when your child starts to transition. And I have actually asked a couple of members of our Young Adult Leadership Academy who have watched their parents advocate for them, and now here they are, finished with college or in college. And I've asked them to come and help participate in that Advocate Academy. I don't know, I think as parents, it's nice to see our kids as young adults and seeing them thrive, seeing that all this advocacy that we've done actually paid off, right? So I'm excited about that one. We also are going to start our 201 series November timeframe, where we'll start talking about state and local advocacy, going to your school board meetings, talking to your state's, your elected officials. These are the people who really have a huge impact on your life. These are the people that were having us make the decisions about what to do with virtual learning versus in person, and how virtual learning is being supported for children with IEPs or 504 plans. And it would be nice to know how to share these experiences so we can create actionable long-term change, right? And then let's talk about the federal policy, the federal advocacy though too, because as we know, IDEA and ADA and 504, those are all federal policies. So how do we share what we have, our experiences to, again, help create actionable long-term change? And then that's it. Mm-hmm. Done. So I am going to stop us with recording and then take us off our screen share as well. And then we're going to start answering some questions. Mm-hmm. So if, I'm sorry, this thing popped up. So if yes, I will receive. Okay.